Hey guys, my name is Micah and today I'll be showing you how to use the Velocity Midi Effect in Ableton Live. So first of all, I want to give you a few reasons as to why this MIDI effect would be useful at all. So first of all, some MIDI keyboards only have one velocity function, as in they're not weighted, they're not touch sensitive, so when you play in anything into your DAW, it'll all have the same velocity, and that sounds very robotic. So then you could use this MIDI effect to add some kind of variability that might make it sound a little less static. You can also use it to control certain drum hits. Maybe you want your hi-hats to have a certain kind of velocity range, and you can also use it to make sure that your velocity never exceeds a certain amount. So for instance, if you do have a weighted keyboard and you've played a melody in and some notes are just really loud, you could manually edit them. Or you could just add this Velocity Midi effect and just give it a specific cutoff so that you don't have some really loud noise. I guess kind of like a compressor. So I'm just going to drag it here. I've got a MIDI track with a grand piano, which you can get by hitting Command-Shift-T, and under MIDI effects, you can just go to Velocity and pull it in. If you open this triangle, there are a bunch of presets. Don't worry about those. I'm just going to pull in a standard one, which you can now see down here, and I'm going to explain to you how the different knobs work. Again, for the demonstration, I've got a little clip here. It's a whole tone scale. And at this stage, they all have the same velocity. You can see down here. Maybe you don't see that. Just open this little triangle on the left, and this should open over here. And by default, this will be your velocity. And as you heard, they all have the same velocity / volume. So velocity is kind of like a fancy word for your MIDI volume of each individual notes, irrespective of the actual volume of your track. It's kind of like how hard the MIDI note was hit. So this Velocity Midi effect can alter incoming MIDI note velocity values, which are between 1 and 127, in either a controlled or random manner, and it can perform functions on both the MIDI note on velocity as well as the MIDI note off velocity, or even both, depending on which operation here you've chosen. So by default here is on both. So the difference between MIDI note on and note off is that your MIDI note on command is the start of your MIDI note. It's when your computer knows to start playing the note, and the note off command is the command that tells your computer to stop playing the note, otherwise it would just keep playing it forever. So talking about these operations, you've got your both, which is for your note on and off. You've also got your velocity operation, which only would apply then to your MIDI note on parameters, and then your relative velocity, or REL, or rel. This is for your note off messages, but let's leave it on both for now. Now above this, you see this little graph. It's got an X and your Y axis. And if I change this out high number, you can see that the gradient of this straight line changes. And if I change the out low, you can see that the gradient also changes, but it changes it from the bottom left. This line over here represents the range of velocities that you're allowed to hear, or that the MIDI notes are allowed to have after they've gone through this effect. Your incoming velocities are shown on your X axis. So all of these values over here. And your outgoing velocities is this y-axis. So at the moment, your income velocity could be over here. So let's say this kind of looks halfway. So let's say it's about 63-ish. And your outgoing velocity will also have that value. So just to hear this effect, if I change this volume over here, then what I'm saying is that no matter what the incoming x value over here, the y value is actually going to be lower than the x value, if you can see that, because of the slant of this curve. And if this out high is full, then it should be louder. Similarly, let's have a look at the out low. So this out low increased the lowest velocity that you can hear. As you can see, the y-axis increases, so the x value will always be the same down here, but the y value is increasing, which means overall everything is going to be a lot louder, but it also means that the range of velocity is going to be less. As you can see here, you can have a value from 1 to 127 on the curve, whereas if your out low is quite high, you've only got a few ranges possible, so there's less variability. Now you can't really hear the variability because in my MIDI clip, all the velocities are set to the same number. It's probably 100 actually. Yep, it's 100. You can see that at that little rectangle when you hover your mouse on the line. So how do we add variability? Well, you can manually program it in, but you can also add some kind of random element, and you can go to this random knob over here, and as I increase it, you can see that in this graph there's like a gray line that gets thicker, and this shows the range. So the smaller this random range, now it's 0, and you can't see that line. As it gets bigger, you're increasing the potential variability of the notes that you would hear. So to me that sounds realistic. This sounds fake. So now that I have some kind of variability in the velocity of my MIDI notes, I want to control the output a little bit more. So I do like this random function, but I just want to gain a bit more control over what kind of velocities I hear. So now to the right of random, you've got your range, and underneath the range, you've got a lowest rectangle, and basically here you can set the range of velocities that you want to hear. But if I only want to hear velocities between, say, 48 and 69, then everything else is going to, well, potentially be discarded, potentially be clipped. That's where this mode comes in. We'll get to that just now. But right now I'm saying I only want to hear velocity notes between, say, 36 and 47. And you can also see that on your graph here now. This is where 36 starts and this is where 47 starts. And any incoming notes are mapped according to this graph. You don't need to worry about these things on the side, because what happens to these things on the side is determined by your mode. I hope you guys are still with me so far. If not, maybe just ask a question in the comments so that I can explain it a bit better. But yeah, if you're in clip mode, then it does just what it says. It clips the incoming note velocities so that they stay within the range. So if a note has a higher range than this, it'll just clip it and bring it down to 47. If the lowest velocity is underneath 36, it'll clip it and just bring it up to 36. Now gate mode will remove the incoming notes altogether if their velocities are outside of the range. So you won't even hear them. And in this case, every time it cuts out a note, this light will shine. So at this stage, everything's being cut. Why is that? Well, because all of my MIDI notes over here have a velocity of 100. And even though I have a random variable, I only have a random variable of about 15. If I take all my notes over here, I just Command A to select everything. As soon as I bring it down, you can hear the notes because they're not being clipped and taken away anymore. They're not being gated. And the final mode over here is fixed. So in fixed mode, the out high velocity defines all the outgoing note velocities regardless of the incoming note velocity. As the graph shows you, doesn't matter what the incoming velocity is as your X value, they're all going to be 127, and this line should go down if I change this knob. So now I still need to tell you about the drive and this comp function. This comp is short for compand, and it's both an expander and a compressor. So let's quickly start with the drive. So the drive and the compand, I don't even know how to say it, but the drive and the compand controls can be combined to create more complex curves. You can get some really interesting things, as you can see. So here it's expanding the velocity, here it's compressing it. The drive pushes all values in the curve to the outer extremes. This would make the loud notes even louder and the soft notes even softer. So when you understand these controls, you can use them together to sculpt or even redefine the dynamic structure of a piece. First, I would recommend you put them on any melodies that sound a little static to you, maybe breathe some life into it. And another great application would be to use them on drums, specifically, say, hi-hats, if you want some kind of loud, soft variability in the upper range. That usually gives some life to a piece, and it can really work together with the groove. If you use this Velocity Midi Effect together with the arpeggiator, you can actually do some really cool things with drums because of your re-trigger command in your arpeggiator. If you don't know how to use that, you can check out this video, which explains the arpeggiator really well. But it's always important for you to experiment yourself and get to know your tools. So if there are any MIDI effects that you don't know how to use, I've compiled them all into this playlist so that you can learn how to use them better. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon in the next one.